We're back at it again for this month's IGN First on The Outer Worlds 2. Our exclusive coverage has touched on the new and wild weapons in the sequel and how the RPG mechanics have been reworked. But here, we're looking at the nuances of combat itself. From enemy behavior to the way difficulty works this time around, lead combat designer Rob Donovan and lead systems designer Kyle Koenig broke down how Obsidian has redesigned The Outer Worlds 2's gameplay for a better combat experience.
Get ready for an adventure.
So we've added a lot to the combat experience in The Outer Worlds 2. That was something that we identified that we could really sort of polish up and improve on, modernize a little bit, and add some really interesting features that we've been having a lot of fun with over the course of development. So one of the things that you can do now is parkour. You can climb on things. You can mantle up onto objects. You can vault over them. You can slide, which adds a lot of sort of mobility and your ability to sort of escape, navigate around the battlefield, put some objects between yourself and your enemies, and otherwise get to sort of places that you maybe couldn't before. So that it feels a lot more interesting to just move around the world. It's a lot of fun, and we have some cool RPG elements that sort of stack onto that and allow you to do things like sliding while shooting and vaulting. And for players that want to use the environment, there's just a lot more to do. We also have grenades. You can throw grenades now. Enemies can throw grenades at you to flush you out of cover. NPCs are using cover now as well. So the whole combat experience is way more dynamic, way more interesting, both from the player experience, actually navigating around, being able to use grenades, flush enemies out of cover, to use some of your resources in maybe more challenging combats, and also to react to what these new enemies are going to do to you. We think that they're now a much more challenging encounter, and they might surprise you sometimes, which is something that I'm really looking forward to players getting their hands on.
As Rob mentioned, all the different tools that we've added, we've integrated into our RPG systems. Have perks and flaws and all other sorts of elements that improve various elements of them. Leadership players making use of their companions more than a soldier player or a rogue might. Rogue players taking stealth to their advantage to sneak up on enemies and take them out before the fight. Science players using gadgets like tactical time dilation and the shield gadget to really take advantage of those tools. And of course, just soldier players using their vast array of weapons to take enemies out. So from the very beginning, we knew we wanted to step up that weapon feel and moment-to-moment gunplay. So we looked at other games like Destiny, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare came out right as we were entering pre-production. So we looked at all those games, reviewed, okay, what do RPGs do well about gunplay, and what do these games do well? So we looked at things like, what do stats drive well, such as damage, range, things that feel good to progress over time, and what do things feel bad, like sway and spread and recoil, that we can really step back on and let just feel good from the get-go. So we would compare and contrast what we're doing against those other games and see, okay, what feels good from the start.
There's a role for RPGs that are FPS RPGs to sort of increase the accuracy and the precision and the handling of guns using the RPG skills. But we wanted to make sure that even sort of the basic weapons that didn't have a lot of RPG mechanics within them still felt good to use from the get-go. And the RPG mechanics are another layer that you can add on top of that. A lot of what we've added in terms of the movement and the resource management and things allow you to play sort of your own way. We've got different kinds of armor, light, medium, and heavy, which each sort of feed into a different kind of play style, faster, but maybe less resistant to damage, or a sort of tanky player that doesn't mind getting hit by a number of things because you're going to deal the damage right back. The grenades, of course, as I mentioned. We also have various strengths and weaknesses based on our creatures in the game and our auto mechanicals. There's a lot of different ways to engage with the systems in the RPG, both in terms of going into a menu and putting points into things, but also in the sense of gathering gear and being able to think through, if you're clever, how that gear is going to affect different kinds of combat encounters. So we have some very fast-moving enemies, and if you use TTD to slow them down, you'll have a much easier time. So maybe you want to use TTD because you're having trouble tracking fast-moving flying things. Or maybe you want to double down on that tank play style. You want to put on the heavy armor, you want to use the shield gadget, you just want to kind of not worry about health for a while and just go through and stomp a couple of guys before you have to really think too much about min-maxing. We also have, because we don't have a level scaling system anymore, we have a lot of opportunities for players to challenge themselves. If they think that their playstyle and their particular build is really working out well for them, they can opt into some harder challenges across the course of the game and see if they have what it takes to sort of go above and beyond what another kind of player with a different kind of build might have.
Yeah, and using those tools to your advantage, whether you're a player that's really trying to min-max and take the most out of like your play style, or someone who looks to gear and equipment as a way to supplement your weaknesses. Rogue players realizing, oh, I'm really squishy, and if I get caught, I'm gonna die. Looking to use, okay, well, maybe I'll use sniper rifles or long-range equipment to take out things that are really threatening early. Or even something as simple as automechs are a real challenge to me because I like to use weapons like SMGs and shotguns which bounce off their armor, taking some shock grenades to deal with them early and lock them down so that they can't blow you up as quick as possible.
I'll add, crucially, despite the previous answer where we said we wanted to make sure that the gun's handled well from the get-go, we don't want to eliminate any sort of decision-making and skill in player builds and cleverness, really. A lot of what we love about The Outer Worlds 1 is that approaching different combat encounters from different angles could give you some big advantages. We want to retain that and tie it even more tightly to the RPG mechanics. Not doing level scaling seems like a simple change, but it has enormous ripple effects over the way that we create the game. Enemies now are at what we're calling tiers, and so each enemy has its own set of stats and its own damage values, health values, and damage prevention based on armor and things, and those are static throughout the game. So early on, some of our more difficult, higher tier enemies will be more difficult just from a math perspective. They're gonna hit you harder, they're gonna take less damage, and when they take damage, they might have a higher health pool. Meanwhile, towards the end of the game, if you want to return to some of the regions that you've been to before, you'll find that those enemies are just how you left them. And hopefully by this point you have leveled it up, got enough gear, got enough cool armor and gadgets and skills and perks and maybe flaws to be able to come back and really romp on those enemies that maybe were giving you difficulty before. We think that's a really enjoyable experience, and it prevents, from my perspective, from the combat side, having a lot of the game feel samey. With level scaling, there's a real risk that something that is slightly hard is always slightly hard, and something that is slightly easy is always slightly easy because it's traveling with you. And by the end of the game, it might feel like, well, this is more or less the same encounter that I've had from the beginning. We took a lot of time on The Outer Worlds 1 to try and disrupt that, but I think this approach, with no level scaling and tier bands, let's call them, of NPC combatants, will do an even better job at making those encounters feel different and feeling you grow more powerful over the course of the game.
Yeah, looking back at some of our older games like New Vegas, something we really wanted to hit on again was that feeling of leaving Goodsprings, heading north to Deathclaws and Cazadors, and just getting bullied. And the player experience of, okay, well, I'll go explore something else now and come back and then bully them back as you've gained levels and experience, gotten better gear. And really hitting that. We also just have different difficulty modes. We have story mode returning, which is for players who are just looking to experience the story and combat's not the focus for them, all the way up to hard and very hard for players that really want to push their skill as both an FPS player and big RPG nerd like myself, where how can I break the game and how can the game push back against that?
Yeah, we were talking about this. This is one of my particular hobby horses that's always on my mind. And the way to solve that is not through some silver bullet that's just going to make players play the way that I demand that they play. It's a lot of sequential steps and a lot of sort of noodling on the margins to make sure that in this game we want our NPC combatants to behave as if they care about their own survival. So humans can take cover now, and they will. And especially if you are shooting them at long range and they're not maybe sure exactly where you are, they will take cover and they'll maybe hide there. Creatures will sometimes try to block line of sight to players that are too far for them to reach, especially creatures that maybe only have claws and jaws to attack you. They won't be able to engage with you at extreme ranges, so they'll take a sort of a defensive posture. And it's not to block the players that like to be snipers and to creep around and try to get angles on distant enemies. That will still be a viable playstyle. But my goal for the combat is to make sure that that's not the most viable playstyle. That if you want to walk in and smack guys with two-handed melee weapons, that is a perfectly acceptable option, and you don't feel forced to play with weapons plinking damage at extreme range because it's the only safe way to not get killed. I would like both of those ends of the sort of the spectrum, let's say, to have a great time and engage with all of the combat mechanics that we have without sort of leading any player to think, well, I certainly can't play that way, so I have to play this other way that maybe is less fun or maybe doesn't suit the way that I want to engage with this combat system.
Yeah, and we've tackled that in a lot of different ways. Giving NPCs new tools, so giving them things like grenades to flush you out of cover, working with content teams to add flankers and melee enemies that'll just go around the outside and flush you out, giving the NPCs the ability to hide and take cover and slide into cover if they're getting if you're really peppering them. All sorts of tools like that to really diversify the options the player has to take in order to deal with combat.
Yeah, and I am under no illusion that we will entirely solve this problem and that no players will be able to exploit. I've seen speedruns. I know how it works. But really the point is to make sort of all the play styles viable and interesting and fun throughout, and not have one particular play style be so strong that you're encouraged to use it even if you don't like it.
Gateway to transcendence. My piety is the key.
I will say that we are not aiming to be avowed level of melee combat. We consider them a melee first game with obviously ranged weapons in the mix. We consider ourselves to be a ranged first game with melee in the mix. And what we've tried to do is make sure that our melee combat has the ability to support a few ranges of playstyles. The stealth player that wants to sneak through the grass and stab guys in the back. So we have a series of melee weapons that accommodate that and in some cases really make that more fun and more interesting. And then we have the sort of two-handed melee weapons, the big ones, that have a bunch of perks associated with them that will allow you to unlock more variety in your melee attacks for the people, and we have some of them on the dev team here that just want to pick up a big stick and smack guys in the face.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make sure that we support that throughout, even though a lot of what I've certainly been focusing on is the ranged experience. We do definitely have support for the melee players as well.
And definitely on the RPG side, we want to make sure that melee is well supported and has plenty of things to do with their build and has some variety. We had obviously had tactical time dilation from Outer Worlds 1, and we were looking how do we evolve the science player going into the Outer Worlds 2. And that's where gadgets came from, which is players now have an energy bar that they can spend using one of 4 different gadgets. Each one has a strong combat purpose, like TTD, obviously slowing down bullet time is always a fan favorite in pretty much any shooter. We have a shield gadget, which gives you a bunch of bonus health, but it's also useful in exploration, granting you immunity temporarily to hazards such as fire, so the player can pass through those areas and get to new locations. We have the N-ray scanner, which lets you see enemies through walls, which has a major use in combat, being able to carefully plan for enemies that are behind cover, but it also does additional bonuses like granting you critical hit chance on the RPG side. And so the player can swap between these once they've acquired them and use them against different enemies as needed.
In that vein, being able to level up your science and get more energy and turn that into more tactical time dilation is sort of giving you a combat bonus, even if that's not your primary interest. We wanted to make sure that even with my focus on the combat side of things, that if you put points into other skills, that we're still making sure you're not so dramatically underpowered that you kind of can't play the game the way that you want to. So we're cognizant that the gadgets are one way as well to be able to get through some things that maybe you're a little underleveled for, or maybe you're not quite perfectly spec'd into, but give you the ability to use those perks, skills, and gadgets to get through that combat.
Yeah, and I'll say the interesting thing about these first-person shooter RPGs is that they have a very diverse audience. We have players that just like playing shooters and they're good at it and they're good at aiming, and we have players who aren't quite as skilled at that and they just really want a strong RPG experience. And tools like the gadget's tactical time dilation is one of the ways that we're looking to help that group be able to better engage with the combat and aiming, which might be something that's hard for them.
Rob and Kyle have all the technical insight on things from a gameplay perspective, but we also have interviews with other key developers about the revamped flaw system and the bigger, more expansive open zones across the game, so be sure to check out those videos as well. And we still have a lot more to showcase for Obsidian's next big game, so for more on The Outer Worlds 2, stick with IGN.